What I will do is do a presentation on what do the investors need. And I'm specifically targeting the institutional investors. And I will have a couple of points here. In the next 30 minutes, I will show you who the investors are, what investors need to know in order to spend the money that they have at this moment. And we did an investment intention, so we collected information about what are the intentions of the investors and the fund managers. And I have some slides specifically for you on Central Europe and Eastern Europe. The thing is, if you look at what are the investors, it is basically like wine. There is no such thing like one wine. There's red wine, there's white wine, there's several types of wine. The same goes for the investors. It is hard to define. There are some common groups, of course, but actually if you look closer, it is more complicated than that. But in general, you could say there are a couple of specific groups. Of course, we have the pension funds, we have the insurance companies, but also the high net worth individuals, but also the sovereign wealth funds. What might be interesting to show you is one example from the Dutch pension funds. INREV is a European association, but we have a couple of Dutch pension funds as member. And this is actually some of the figures that you see from the Dutch pension fund in total. At this moment, they have invested, this was June 2017, invested 160 billion euros in real estate. And if you split it down, you see like they have it in indirect and they have some in direct. This figure means that a lot of these Dutch pension funds are indirect investing in real estate. That means that they invest in real estate via funds, vehicles, all types of vehicles, JVs and club deals, and not per se direct. So they don't hold the assets directly, but they do it indirectly. They also, what you see here is also that they have this non-listed and versus listed. Well, INREV is the association for the non-listed, so that's why I highlighted the non-listed. So that's actually 49 billion euros in real estate allocated. If you look at, and this is coming from the survey that we did, all investor type increase their allocation. We see a lot of money still coming into real estate. And if you look at the pension funds, well, this is in total, so that's not only the Dutch ones, but also the Danish ones and the UK ones. So this is actually a figure, 9% allocation to real estate, and you see that they will increase that level allocation. Insurance companies typically have a lower allocation to real estate, but also they want to increase the allocation. And then you have the other investors, and you see there's a specifically high number, 13%. That means that they have like more allocation, and even they will increase the allocation to real estate. That means that a lot of money will flow into the real estate sector. At this moment, around 50 billion euros, and this came from a study that we did on a global scale, together with our US partners, and in Asia, INREV. So this is actually from a global perspective. In general, all investors 10%, so that is the average. So what I said, already, there is a lot of interest in real estate, so the enthusiasm remains undimmed. A couple of reasons for that. Diversification, it's really helpful to diversify. If you have stocks and bonds, it's really helpful if you have real estate also in your pocket, and you see that the real estate continues to draw the capital, and the allocations have been increased. I already said about the wine, you have different types. If you look closer, you see here per country. Here are the domiciles, and you see there's quite some differences there. For instance, the Finnish, the Finnish investors, they have already 16% allocated to real estate. That is quite a lot, so they are above the benchmark. If you look at the Korean, I want to highlight the Korean ones. They have now around 9% allocation, but actually they are willing to increase that quite significantly. So if you happen to speak with some of your Korean investors, you will notice that they will probably be eager to invest in real estate. And actually the same goes for the UK, so also there. Although there are some challenges there at this moment with the Brexit, of course, but still this is the numbers coming from the investment intentions. So what do investors need to know in order to spend? Well, actually, from INREV side, we are representing the investors and the fund managers, and we captured all our requirements into our INREV guidelines. Not sure if you are aware of the guidelines, but it comes with a couple of modules, and basically all these modules show you what kind of questions the investor will ask if they invest in real estate. Things like on corporate governance, how has it been structured, on reporting, but also on the property valuation, how is it independent done, and do you do it with kind of a RICS requirements? But also performance measurement, how do you calculate your performance? How much does it cost? So on the fees and expenses. So basically three types of questions. So of course we're talking about real estate, so an investor will always ask what kind of assets are we talking about, what is the portfolio, but also how is the investment structured from a tax point of view, but also from a governance point of view, and of course who is the manager. And looking at the manager, it's really important to like what kind of senior staff they have in the fund, in the operating company. So who is that manager? One topic that is actually quite important nowadays, we did a survey on the investor side and we asked them like, how important is sustainability for you? So how important is it that you tackle environmental things, that you have things on social and on governance? Well, this figure, this survey shows that it is actually for investors nowadays, the institutional ones, extremely important. Very important that the fund manager and the assets are sustainable. That it's from an environmental point of view, very important to show how good you are with sustainability, but also from a social and a governance point. Only on the social part you see that it's less important, but still this is a very important message that especially the investors are looking for sustainability topics. From a fund perspective, if you look at the funds, this is back to the investment intention survey. If you look at the funds, we asked like, what are the preferences for when it comes down to funds? Well, here you see the preference. On the left side, you see that typically investors like to have it regulated. So a lot of these institutional investors don't like unregulated or non-regulated funds. So they actually, well, they don't love laws, but it's really important that it is done in a proper way. They like closed-end funds, and another thing that I would like to highlight is similar by co-type. That means that they try to, if they team up with other investors, they like to have like similar investors in the fund. So that means like insurance companies like to team up with insurance companies. And what you see is, and especially in light of the Brexit, you saw that there were some issues there, that there are issues if you have retail investors combined with institutional investors in one fund, then it gets a bit tricky. And on the other side, they prefer like more the larger investor pools, but also funds with a GAV, gross asset value, above 500 million. So they actually, what you see also there as a trend, funds get bigger, funds are more multi-sector, multi-country. So there are clear preferences from the investor community. This is a slide, this is showing like the time series from 2007 to 2017. And if you look at the, you can actually divide, of course, the assets into the funds into value add, core, and opportunistic. And if you look at the preferences at this moment, you see that in 2017 the core is 40% have a preference for core, and value add is the most attractive prospect. So if you have a value add fund, this is actually the best at this moment. But of course there is also room for the core. You see the development here, and it's actually looking at 2008 there. At that moment, just at the crisis, you saw that the core like really it was far more opportunistic. But now it's more like it seems like a more balanced one. Then something on investment intention, specifically in the region. So just one slide back on this one, we had 314 respondents coming from North America, Europe and Asia Pacific. including some fund managers, the largest fund managers, investors, and the fund-of-fund managers. In total, the capital that was in our survey was 2.1 trillion euros, so that's actually a massive amount of money. And then the question, like, how does the CE rank for investors? Well, Central Europe was actually in the top 10 as seen by investors, and where the Eastern Europe is a bit further down, but the preferred investment locations are still France and UK. But Central Europe in the top 10 is quite good, I would say. That slide was for the investors, but if you look at the all respondents, so not only investors but also the fund managers, you see a similar figure. And what is also a good message for you now, here today is that investors are confident about the region. So they are actually seeing the region as a nice location to invest in. So that's actually, I think, a very good message for you. And you see here from who they are, then that's the fund manager community are really confident, but also the investor community. If you then go one step deeper into the who is then targeting at this moment the Central Europe, then you see that on the left side the investors come from the US side. They are interested in this location. The Finnish, but also the Dutch investors are interested in the region. If you look at the fund manager side, you see specifically that the UK fund managers are looking into your region. So in this case, it's good to know that the UK are ahead of the queue in this area. We also asked the questions like, what kind of sectors are you looking at? So in industrial and logistics stands out of the crowd, from the crowd. A lot of interested in logistics, and later on I heard that Prologistics is also coming, so probably he can also explain a bit more into what is the case for logistics, retail, and of course also still offices, and then a bit slower is like the residential and the student accommodation. But this is the top 5 how they see it at this moment. The key messages here is look at the investors not only like from groups, look at them also from like what is the background of the investors. Look at what kind of INREV guidelines we have for the community. Just check your compliance with our guidelines, because that will help you to align with the investor community. So that will help you to understand like what are the requirements, and of course look at our surveys, and specifically on the investment intention, to understand like what kind of preferences they have from the fund side.